I'm Laura Jones, and in this session I'm speaking with elite ultrarunner Ryan Sands. Ryan was the first person to win all 4 races in the 4 Desert Series, and in 2013 became the first person to ever win an ultra trail race on all 7 continents. In 2011, Ryan won the Leadville 100, setting the 3rd fastest time in the history of the race and the fastest time by a non-American, and it was his first 100-miler. One of the greatest victories came in 2017 when he won the Western States 100. In 2018, Ryan and a friend set a new trail running record on a section of the Great Himalayan Trail through Nepal. A distance of 1,435 kilometres was covered, with an elevation gain the equivalent of climbing 7.5 Mount Everests. Ryan runs for Red Bull and Salomon. He's 37 and he lives with his family in Cape Town, South Africa. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great to be chatting.
So perhaps before we just jump into the detail, perhaps you could just tell us a little bit about your background and how your running journey started.
Yeah, so I guess my running journey started quite late in life. Growing up in Cape Town, being surrounded by the ocean, I spent a lot of time surfing and also playing rugby at school. And it was only really last year at university that I had a whole bunch of friends running a half marathon out of town, half marathon that always had a big party afterwards. So I thought I'd join them, but entered a bit late and the half marathon was full. So I decided to enter the whole marathon or the full marathon. And yeah, it kind of went really well and the running bug bit. And then, yeah, just from there kind of progressed into running trails. And yeah, before I knew it, I was running ultra trail races. So it was quite a quick progression. And yeah, the last, what's been the last 13, 14 years has been a kind of, yeah, really, really crazy and epic time of my life.
Yeah, amazing. I love the fact that you said that it was the after party was the thing that attracted you to start. That's brilliant.
Yes.
And what are you going to be focusing on in 2020?
So 2020, yeah, I think I really enjoy mixing up like running races, but then also doing some like free running projects as such, or FKT attempts. So a big race focus for 2020 will be Ultra Trail Mont Blanc in August, and then do a couple of build-up races to that. And then hopefully towards the end of the year, I'm going to go back to Namibia and do a project on the Skeleton Coast out there. That's an ongoing project that I started at the end of last year. So yeah, I guess it's Ultra Trail Mont Blanc and Namibia are kind of my 2 big goals for the year.
Amazing. And you know, long term, what are you sort of what are your long-term focuses? You know, you've achieved so much already. You know, what are you still hoping to tick off during your career?
I guess Ultra Trail Mont Blanc has been kind of one race that I've never had, or just like I always seem to have a bad race experience there. So I'd love to get a good result there. And then I guess, yeah, like you mentioned, like I've been lucky to have a long career, and the further like my career's panned out, the more I've realized like that I want to continue loving what I do and keeping that passion. So I think for me, it's important to kind of keep finding new cool and fun things to do, but also be nice to give it back to the sport as well. And in Cape Town last year, started up a thing called the 13 Peaks Challenge, which is really growing. So guys have got to tag 13 peaks around Table Mountain and the surrounding areas. A little bit like a kind of like one of the, like say the Bob Graham round in the UK, where you start and finish in the same place and tag some peaks. It's a really awesome way to also see Cape Town and the kind of greater area. So something like that's really growing, and I'm really excited about that. So just, I guess it's a way for me to give back to the community. And also the cool thing is like a lot of guys are hiking it and walking it. So it's not just about trail running, it's more about getting out there and enjoying the outdoors. So I'm really passionate about that. I'm also really involved with the Southern Lodestar Foundation, and we run a whole bunch of feeding programs in Southern Africa. So yeah, those are kind of, I think for me, it's just important to try and give back and make a difference.
Oh, that's amazing. And is that what sort of is your main motivation now? You know, you have had, you know, an incredible career. Is kind of the love of it and wanting to share that love with other people what really motivates you now and keeps you wanting to, like you said, carry on for as long as you can?
For sure. I think that's a massive driving factor. Having said that, yeah, I think I'm like feeling pretty motivated and excited to go back and race like a race like Ultra Trail Mont Blanc. So like from a competitive point of view, I've definitely still got that drive. There's maybe kind of, I think there are probably less races that really appeal to me now. So I probably do a few less races and really kind of focus on those. And then also like a project like Namibia, there's definitely like a kind of like competitive part of me that wants to see how quickly there's a section of Namibia that I'm trying to cover on foot, and there's that drive to see how quick I can do that. So I think there's still that drive to push myself both physically and mentally, and just see to like keep evolving as an athlete and also a human. But also as you discussed, I think for me, I really enjoy giving back to my local community and as well as the greater community, and just trying to, I guess, like I've been so lucky and so fortunate to be given so much. It's good to give back a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also, I think it's really interesting that there's something about ultra running which makes it quite unique, that actually a lot of people find their peak, sort of in their mid-30s, don't they, and onwards. There's, it's because it's not all, as you know, it's not all down to just your physical fitness. There's so many other components to running these great long distances. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly. I think that's why I've noticed a lot of people in the sport, I guess they're like really good for like 2 or 3 years, and then they kind of just you don't hear of them again, or they just kind of stop racing and competing. And I think a large part of that is that mental drive and focus. I think obviously an ultra does take a lot out of you, like physically and mentally, in the training and preparation and the build up and also the racing. So yeah, I think for me it's been important to keep that love and passion and mix it up a bit and not try and race too much, and also find other things that excite me.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so obviously you've raced lots of different race distances. Do you have a favorite race distance now? And what does a sort of typical week of training look like when you're building up to one of your favorite races?
Yeah, I guess for me, my favorite distance, or kind of main focus distance, is 100 miles. And my training's like evolved and changed a lot. I think training for my first 100 miler, which was the Leadville 100 mile, I was doing like massive distance and like trying to run like 200 plus kilometers a week and doing like huge amount of time on my legs. And like I'd also I'd have some really big weeks and then like drop, like kind of reduce my training, like have some really big recovery blocks in between there. Whereas now I kind of, I got glandular fever in 2015, I think, was from like overdoing it a bit. And ever since then, I've just tried to back off a bit of my training. I think also that I'm older now, I think training smart is sometimes better than just huge volume. So now I probably average about 110, 120 Ks a week. And then like leading up to a big race, say like Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, I'd probably try to do like a 4 to maximum 6 week block of like kind of 100-mile weeks. Maybe back off 1 or 2 of those weeks if I'm feeling tired, and just try and like be like really specific in those key like training blocks. But I think like throughout the year, I've kind of realized just like being really consistent helps. And I guess, like having said all that, I know like early season, like say where I am now, it's nice to work on some weaknesses. So currently like doing a lot of kind of strength work as well, and working on some weaknesses just to try and bulletproof myself as such when like I pick up the training closer to some key races. So yeah, and also I guess training, I've tried to also constantly change it and mix it up a bit. I kind of find sometimes I'm a creature of habit, so you find something that works for you and you want to stick to it, which is good. But I think your body is also needs like a new stimulus the whole time. If you keep doing the same thing, you're not going to get the same return. So mixing it up and finding what works for you is important, and to keep evolving. And also, I guess, just see like what's going on around you. Like I found, like if you got a really busy family life at the moment, or if like work's hectic or whatever you're doing is hectic, then sometimes you have to back off the training, or if you're not getting as much sleep as you'd like to. I think you have to really adapt to how kind of like the overall stress on your body, which I think a lot of athletes sometimes make that mistake. They're very kind of set in like, this is the training program I need to follow, whether like I get 2 hours sleep the night before or 8, like I'm still going to try to do this workout, which you have to be flexible and listen to your body, which I've kind of realized over the years is quite important.
Yeah, and there's always a danger if you kind of do it and grind it out and it doesn't go as well as you want it to, then that leaves you feeling rubbish and despondent, doesn't it? And you know, it's not good, is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's just a downward spiral, I guess. You keep trying to get out of that.
Yeah. When it comes to race day, what do you like to do? Do you have like a set things that you always do to make sure that you know your race, you set yourself up to run the best way that you can?
Again, I think it's like changed over the years. I kind of probably early years I try to like be as focused as possible, and almost maybe the week leading up to the race, almost try and be on my own as much as possible and really focus on the race and kind of run through different scenarios in my head when things are going well, when things are going right, just to like mentally be prepared. And try and not change too much like that I normally do on a regular daily basis. The day before a race, I guess the typical stuff like staying hydrated, try to get off your feet. And then again, I think like evolving, I've kind of realized the past like few years, it almost helps me to be a little bit less focused now, and try and relax more. I think at times I put too much pressure on myself, like leading up to a big race. So now I think doing like stuff with family, or just kind of, obviously you want to be focused on the race and like mentally prepared and having gone through the various scenarios, but I'd almost rather try and do that a little bit further out from the race now, and now I just try and be as relaxed as possible going into the race and try not overthink it. I think especially with an ultra and 100 miles, I think the more relaxed you can be going into the race, and just almost try and switch off from the race like for the first part of the race, and not get too caught up in that hype and waste energy. So I think just being relaxed, but having said all that, obviously you need to stick to some kind of focus and routine, and trying to get as much sleep as possible the week leading up to the race, because depending with some ultras will start at like 12 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're not going to get sleep for 24 hours or however long it's going to take. So looking at some of those key areas I find is important. And also, again, trying to not change too much before a race. I've made the mistakes a number of times of like overeating before a race, or just doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, I guess you don't have a career, like yours without making some mistakes along the way. It's inevitable, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When you mentioned there about in the week before preparing yourself, kind of for the mental side of the race, what strategies do you use, to get through a race when it gets really hard? What do you do mentally to get through it?
Yeah, I think like a big thing is just to try and stay positive. And that's why I like to visualize things beforehand, because I've never done an ultra where everything's gone 100% according to plan. There's always something that goes wrong, or kind of you have highs and lows. And I found that it's a person who can deal with those low moments the best that is the most successful. So I found like when you're having a low moment and physically you're not feeling good, if like mentally you go into a negative space, then it's just like a downward spiral. Whereas if mentally you can just try and stay strong and just focus on the positives, and breaking a race down into little bite-sized chunks. So if it's getting really bad and tough, just focus on kind of getting to the next tree or kind of the next aid station, and those like bite-sized chunks just make it more mentally achievable. But then also, I guess that's why I love trail running, just being out in kind of in like a really pretty natural environment definitely helps, and you're able to kind of take your mind off the pain and suffering at times. But again, I guess like the pain and suffering is temporary. I've always found if you keep going, you do eventually kind of get back out of it, and you feel good again, like physically. Like I I know with an ultra, like I kind of often find the lower your lows, the higher your highs become, and like those kind of almost get exaggerated the further into an ultra you go. So I guess it's just trying to focus on the positives, and like I was the person that remind myself that I'm the person that chose to be here. Just make the most of it, and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. And with that in mind, do you have a particular strategy or a rule of thumb for deciding when you would run and when you would hike during a race? You know, how do you plan that in advance? How do you do that?
I guess it depends on obviously how you're feeling, but I definitely know gradients, and also depends on the distance of the race. But if I know the race course well, then generally I would know kind of sections that are probably better to run, as opposed to kind of, or like, I'd know the sections that are definitely like the steep climbs that are definitely can be run, and those that can be power hiked. Because it's often it's more efficient to power hike. So yeah, I guess like having said all that, it's also really important in training to practice power hiking. I think often guys make the mistake, kind of, if you're doing your training runs, they're generally like shorter than 100 miler. So you're feeling good and you generally run a lot of climbs that you'd probably power hike in a race. So I think it's important to practice that and train that. And then also, it's not, I think it's good to like mix it up and kind of power hike certain sections and be more efficient in those sections. I guess it also depends on your running style. But definitely, if it's a race and I'm focusing on a race that I know, I'll definitely kind of know which sections that like in that ideal world should be run and should be kind of hiked.
Yeah, and I guess as well that comes with experience. You know, you know, looking at a course that 80 miles in, okay, I'm not going to be running that gradient, I'm going to be hiking it or whatever. So that's come with your experience, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What do you like nutrition and hydration wise? What works for you during a race? What do you rely on?
Yeah, again, I've kind of like evolved quite a bit through the years. Like generally for racing, I've always found like kind of gels and kind of like Red Bull and water and electrolyte stuff that's easy to get and works the best for me. And then like if it's a really long project or a longer race that goes for longer than 16 hours, then some solid food helps. After I did like Ren and I did that big project through the Himalayas, I've been battling a bit with my stomach if I like overload it with gels. So I've started using a lot more kind of like whole foods and using stuff called spring nutrition. That again, I'm finding works with some solid food, and then kind of like Red Bull and water. So I think again, like I've changed like kind of also like the types of gels I've used like 3 or 4 times throughout my career. Like sometimes I'll find for like 3 years something works really well, and then my body just says like enough's enough, and then like move on to something else. But I've kind of found I'm kind of starting to use more and more solid foods now.
Yeah, it must be I can imagine, you know, it must be such a massive relief when you manage to get the nutrition and find something that works for you and that, you know, keeps you feeling comfortable. When it must be just such a relief.
No, exactly. It's a massive component of racing and running. So kind of as I said, the last year or so I have been battling a bit after that Great Himalayan Trail. I think just running consistently for 24 days and just like eating anything you could get your hands on definitely kind of had some consequences in like later on.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's an incredible feat of human endurance, isn't it, as well? You know, you to an extent, your body's sort of not familiar with the demands that you're putting on it. It's bound to kind of have knock-on effects, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And what about gear, clothing? What things do you rely on that do you think are invaluable for you?
Yeah, I guess for trail running, probably with like any mountain, the weather conditions change so much. But so you can start off a run and be like really hot, and then suddenly get high up on the mountain, can suddenly get really windy and cold and rain or snow. So I think like a good like lightweight waterproof jacket, but that's kind of lightweight. It's not too bulky. So I think it's been cool since just to be like involved with a brand like Salomon and just see the progression of the sport and how stuff's getting lighter and lighter. So I think that's been really cool, like just lightweight stuff that's also really functional. And also just seeing how shoes have progressed through the years and stuff, like backpacks also, just something that's, I remember when I first started trail running, like the backpacks, you'd put it on and it like bounced all over the place and it was really uncomfortable, and it felt like a kind of completely separate, it just felt like a really foreign object on you, whereas now like the like a skin bag that I use just like almost fits really well. There's no movement. So I think kind of finding the right gear that works for you is really important and crucial. But also, again, I suppose having said all that, I think the cool thing about trail running is you don't need to like overthink that stuff too much either.
Yeah, less is more sometimes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we've nearly finished now. I'm just going to ask you 3 more questions. First of all, what is the best piece of running advice you've ever received?
Best piece of running advice I've ever received? I guess probably like maybe what my dad said, just go out there and have fun. And I think that's so true. I've always found it's easier said than done, I guess. You often put way too much pressure on yourself going into a race and training. You always want things to go absolutely perfectly, and generally they don't. So I think if you can laugh about it and have fun and not get like too frazzled by it, like you'll actually be quite surprised with like the end results. So I think just going out there and having fun is so important.
Yeah, I like that, and I love that came from your dad as well. That's lovely. If there's anybody watching who is considering entering their first ultra distance, what would be one piece of advice that you would give them?
My one piece of advice entering your first ultra is to go ahead and like push enter. But I think just be flexible in your training, and not necessarily, I don't know, if you come from like say a road running background, or you've kind of been running marathon distance trail races, you don't necessarily have to kind of double your training or kind of increase your training accordingly for the distance. Like if I run 100k, I don't kind of multiply my training by 1.6 to run 100 miles. So I think like less is more, and not overdoing it. And then just, I guess for an ultra, try and like be as prepared as possible. Like prepare for like, try get your like race nutrition right, something you're comfortable with. Have a backup plan, because generally things can go a bit haywire during an ultra. Get your gear tested. You don't want to like start chafing or get blisters. Just kind of plan some of that stuff, and then also just try and train race specific as possible. If it's an ultra that's going to be really technical or that's going to require lots of power hiking, just train that, and you can probably get away with a lot less training if you prepare properly and just kind of think it through and really be specific about like what areas in your training you train on, and also how you prepare.
Oh, that's brilliant, good advice. And what about any of our audience who are already competing in the sport? They've already taken part in ultra races, but they are keen to kind of take their performance to the next level. I mean, I guess a lot of what you just said would apply to them as well. Is there anything that you would specifically advise?
I think maybe on what I kind of mentioned in the last question, but maybe I think it's important to maybe like keep like changing you don't have to like completely change your training, but try and look at like 1 or 2 areas and maybe mix that up a bit. Like maybe it's your kind of hill sessions, maybe you're doing the same thing, you've been doing the same thing for 5 years, maybe mix it up a bit. I know like your body enjoys a new stimulus or something different. Maybe if you haven't done any weight training, add a bit of weight training or a bit of strength training. I guess it's important to look at, generally, I guess, if you've been running for a long time, you get to a certain fitness level, and through just running, you're going to struggle to get those massive gains. But it might be a small thing like changing nutrition, or changing one or two, kind of adding in some strength training, or kind of looking at like a few different elements of your training that can actually get the biggest gain. So I think it's just to also think outside the box a little bit, and just kind of focus on smaller areas instead of kind of trying to look at like everything at once.
Yeah, that's good advice. And as well, if you, like you say, when you switch to a new stimulus and you see you get those new gains that you haven't had for such a long time, that kind of spurs you on as well, doesn't it? So it has good repercussions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I think that just about brings us to the end. Thank you so much for sparing us some time and for joining us today, Ryan. It was really good to talk to you. What we'll do is we'll put the links underneath so that everyone can follow online, including your biography, Trailblazer. We'll put the links underneath. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And yeah, see you soon.